We are very happy to be joined as we continue the show talking about the draconian cuts to, good things that help poor people in America by the Trump administration. We are very honored to be joined here by Dr. Ben Becker, the editor-in-chief of an outlet you may have heard of, Breakthrough News. Dr. Ben Becker, thank you for joining us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank God for that.
Thank goodness, yeah, wow. Could you imagine?
So as you know, Ben, we're now in the moment. The big, beautiful bill, as Trump called it, has passed the House. There's now some discussion in the Senate, but it's basically just a discussion of you're going to cut off one arm or the other as it concerns this, or one arm or both as it concerns the social safety net. So it seems no matter what, it's going to be pretty bad. I mean, there's a lot here, but I mean, maybe just top line. I mean, what is really happening here? What are they actually proposing to do, trying to do? What should people be worried about and perhaps pushing back on?
Well, look, if you're rich, it is definitely one big, beautiful bill. It's like a wish list for the ultra rich. And I'm sure they've spent the last week clinking champagne glasses because they've gotten pretty much everything they ever wanted in this one bill. But in a phrase, it's probably the largest wealth transfer in human history, from programs, policies, budgets that are set aside to help alleviate childhood hunger and poverty, food insecurity, the lack of healthcare in this country, and just giving it right back in almost equal measure to the top 1%, the top 20%, really the top 0.1% is the biggest beneficiary, and back to the corporations, making, really permanent the Trump tax cuts of 2017. For corporations, but then extending another $500 billion in sort of goodies in permanent tax cuts, while the programs that many people have come to rely on just to survive, not living large, just to survive, are going to be destroyed. And I'd say the politics of this, the reason why they feel they can get away with this is because there is very minor tax cuts for everyone. So if you're in the bottom 20% of the population among the poorest, you're going to see an extra $90 in your in your tax savings. If you go up to the next 20%, you're going to get $650, and then the middle 20% you're going to get $1,290. And so some people say, okay, I got an extra $1,000 or $1,200 over the course of a year. That's an extra $100 a month. Thanks, Trump. That's the thing that they're banking on. But of course, if you were reliant on any federal programs, or if the cost of healthcare is going to be soaring and there's no longer any subsidies for that, or many other ways in which this negatively impacts the economy of working class people, it starts to resemble really a three-card monte or a shell game, where you know how those games work when you're walking down the street and there's somebody who has the three cards, or they're hiding the ball under one, and they make you feel like you can win some money. And so, usually they'll have one person set up there to win a little money at the beginning. So you feel like, oh, I can win $20. And maybe actually they let you win 20. But the whole thing is to draw you in so that you end up spending much more money. And that's really what this is, a very elaborate shell game that's being played, where, okay, some people will see some tiny little savings. Tipped workers will see no tax on tips potentially if this goes through. But again, if you're not raising the minimum wage for tipped workers, or if tipped workers are also losing their Medicaid because they're already so low wage and they have to pay out of pocket for all of their healthcare expenses, it's a net loss. It's a net gain for the corporations, but you feel for a moment like you have a little extra money in your pocket before the con man rips you off.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just broke a lot of hearts by exposing that the game is rigged. The game with the ball underneath one of the three things. But anyways,
there's often like a
that is
pickpocket waiting behind you too. So while you're distracted, they can rob.
It's like Oliver Twist.
But it's a great no. It's a great way to put it though, because it's such a scam. But of course, this bill doesn't just attack the poor in the many ways you just described, and that's just a handful of ways. I mean, these are really programs that people use to like for basic survival. But it doesn't just attack poor working class Americans; it also ramps up funding for mass deportations and expands the entire Trump anti-immigration agenda. So I'm curious if you could maybe go over some of the ways that they're tying this to immigration enforcement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is not really an austerity bill per se. This is nor it's going to increase the trade deficit. I mean, not trade. It's going to increase the budget deficit. It's going to spend a lot of money. They're spending a huge amount of money. It's just they're not spending it on the needs of poor and working class people or the middle class even either. What they're doing is spending the money on an extra $150 billion to the military. And as you said, tens of thousands of more officers for Border Patrol and Homeland Security, the largest ever budget for those two. So basically, the whole government is being reduced to, uniformed men with guns. And it's either going to be the military or the Border Patrol and prisons, and then all the auxiliary subcontractors that live off of those elements of the state. So it's not like it's not small government. It's just big government for those things, and small government for everyone else. And of course, it's true that Trump ran on, a very harsh anti-immigration policy and got a lot of the population riled up on that basis, including people who have almost no immigrants in their communities. And people who just sort of were given a scare campaign about the gangs coming in, and so that sort of was an element of how he was elected. But he didn't run on cutting Social Security. The fact that 25% of seniors in the rural states of this country, there's 31 sort of established states that are more rural, and in those 31 states, 25% of seniors will now have to drive an extra hour to go to the Social Security offices to make any changes to their accounts. Why? Because Doge has eliminated over the phone service. That's not efficiency. That's making the government intentionally deficient. It's become a Department of Government deficiency. And that's really what the plan of this budget bill is too, is basically, even if they're not going to cut benefits directly, they just want to cut all of the people who deliver the benefits. So those government workers are being cut and slashed like crazy while the immigration and border patrol is going up. So, for those elderly folks who might have voted for Trump, or even if they didn't vote for Trump, they didn't vote for that. They didn't vote for their Social Security checks to be, harder to get, or that they now have to drive an extra hour. And it's not like elderly people, it's much easier to drive long distances. They're talking about a population that has a large numbers of disabilities and so forth. So basically everything about this is tilting in the direction of helping war, the deportation machine, and corporations. For everyone else, they're pretty much getting screwed. And again, in those rural areas, if you're cutting Medicaid, you're cutting Affordable Care Act subsidies, a lot of these rural health clinics, they rely entirely on those programs. So it's not just you're not just actually cutting the individuals from being able to access health coverage and therefore health care. You're actually going to collapse the health providing institutions themselves. The clinics and hospitals that rely on those programs will no longer be able to stay open, and so therefore everyone will suffer, even those who are not on those programs. So I think we're living in an extremely dark time in terms of inequality. You have AI threatening tens of millions of jobs, and that's the same time they're saying you're going to have to work if you want to qualify for Medicaid. So the number of jobs is going to go down, but then the regulations on the working class are going to go up, requiring them to work to be able to access a program, which they know they're not going to be able to do. So this is a de facto cut to those programs, even if they're pretending that it's not.
I think you're making a number of great points, and obviously this is just a travesty. And Elon Musk, by the way, behind Doge, who's now leaving the government, saying they're not cutting enough social programs. But it feels like it also just raises another issue here too. Is it feels like such an indictment of capitalism that we're even in a situation where you've got trillions of dollars of GDP being produced. Like it's not like there's like any lack of abundance of wealth and goods in the country, and we're talking about cutting already insufficient social programs. Like that just feels like there's a deeper piece to that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like Bernie Sanders, for all the critiques of him, he made a lot of very compelling points, obvious points. The only industrially advanced country in the world that doesn't provide, healthcare as a universal right. The fact that we have millions of children living in poverty, that is a policy choice right now. Under COVID, under Trump, actually, Trump signed these bills into law. Childhood poverty went down and childhood hunger went down by historic amounts because of the COVID era programs. There was like a 16% drop in the poverty rate in this country just because they decided to create some more programs to make sure that people couldn't be evicted. There would be extensions for unemployment insurance, for SNAP, a whole range of different things. And then under Biden, and the Republicans, of course, pushed this too, they eliminated all of those programs. So you had the poverty rate just bounce right back up. Childhood hunger just bounced right back up to where it was before. It showed in clear and unmistakable terms that it was a policy choice that those millions of children would be hungry. And now it's another policy choice. There's going to be 2 million children who live in households where there will be cuts to SNAP, cuts to food stamps. Now, how is that even smart economically? I don't know, because that means that's hundreds of billions of dollars that would have been going into grocery stores and actually the farmers who sell those products, so they're going to lose that revenue. It also means that those families are now going to cut back on all sorts of other spending that they would do because, of course, you need to eat before anything else. So they're going to cut back all their other shopping. So it's actually going to be an economic depressant. But there's no consideration about any of that because the whole ideological conception of these people who are in power is that basically the billionaires know best what to do with the money. And so we'll just give them all this trillions of dollars, literally trillions, and by some magical development, that will create economic growth for the rest of us. That's what they promise. But we've been hearing this for decades, and it's never turned out true. The top 10 billionaires in the world in the last year were making $100 million a day. That was the Oxfam report from a few months ago. $100 million a day. And they're telling me that they can't provide, SNAP, they can't provide food stamps to people living in the quote unquote richest country in the world. I mean, it really shows the underlying criminality of the government. And I wouldn't say that any of these problems are unsolvable, whether it's healthcare, food insecurity, transportation, the climate crisis, all of them actually could be solvable, but you would have to go at the rights of these billionaires and top corporations to control everything. And right now they're controlling everything, including the government. So if you rob one person on the street with your gun, you're going to go to jail. But if you rob tens of millions of people of their life savings, if you rob tens of millions of people of their health insurance and of their ability to eat, well, then you're a politician in Washington and you're celebrating this week.
Yeah, that's for sure. They actually rushed to get this bill out, cutting this so that they could go on vacation for Memorial Day. So it says a lot. Well, Dr. Ben Becker, as always, very illuminating. You are the editor-in-chief of Breakthrough News. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Freedom Side.
Thanks.